Wednesday. It's Wednesday again. It's been a quiet week though. It's been a quiet and long week. Thank God it's a short week this week. By golly, am I looking forward to doing absolutely sweet flip all over the long Easter weekend, other than maybe eat some chocolate. How is everyone? Hope you're all well. Hope you're all doing well. Quiet week for me. I watched the movie The Awakenings. Bear with me now, this is tenuous, but the movie Awakenings, which you either are or are not aware of. It's one of those movies that you think everyone should have seen, but it's probably passed you by, because it's got the two starring roles are Robin Williams and another Robert, going by the name of De Niro. And it's based on a true story about people suffering from unresponsive dementia, and Robin Williams plays the doctor who trials an experimental drug which seems to have a profound effect on these people and brings them back to life, essentially, hence the Awakenings bit. I won't give you the full details and spoiler for you. I think you should watch it. But just at the very beginning of the movie, Robin Williams, he arrives at the hospital for a job interview because he's beginning his stint at this hospital for these how do they put them in the movie? Anyway, something politically incorrect because it's set in the 1960s and it was made in the 1990s. It's definitely not what we call these people now, put it that way. But anyway, he arrives for his interview in what I believe, now my knowledge of 60s Americana is not great, but I believe it's a Dodge Dart. And he plays this kind of scatterbrain. He himself, again, he's a real person. Dr. Sayer, I think his name was. He's somewhat neurodivergent himself. He's a bit of a scatterbrain, a bit awkward in social situations, not unlike myself. But he pulls up for his interview, all nervous. He gets out of his car, his Dodge Dart, and he puts the key in to lock the door. It's a two shutter, so like it's shot from one side, so looking at the hospital, and then it turns to the other way, so it's looking away from the hospital. And he puts the key in to turn to lock it, and then he walks towards the hospital, and the keys are just left in the door of the car. No more explanation to it. I don't know if they put it in there, to show he is a scatterbrain, but like it's not like he comes back out and realizes he left his keys in the door of the car, or like the car's been stolen or anything. It's not highlighted in any way. It's just, I just noticed it because, like the first thing that popped into my mind was, there's a keys. It was car related. That's why it popped into my mind. But yeah, I don't know. This shows you how slow of a motoring week I had. What the other thing that's just on fresh in my mind, because I'm back from a run, a little humble brag there. But when I go out running, I don't bring anything with me. I like to go just me and my thoughts. So I didn't have my phone with me, but I saw this lovely, and I don't know what it was too far away, and it was just turning into the local Super Value, some sort of 1980s Japanese estate car in what looked to be incredibly mint condition. I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that. Again, this shows how terribly quiet my motoring week was. But another car I saw a few days ago, and I almost didn't notice it at all. It's only when I got closer to it, and I noticed the badge on the back. It was one of those Citroen DS3 racing thing jobbies, probably most notably made famous by in that episode of Top Gear where the three lads go to Italy, on the south of France, in the three hot hatches. May's in a Clio 200, Hammond has an Abarth 500 with that fucking fabric roof jobby, and then Clarkson's in the DS3 racing, but he's in the black and orange full training shoe outlandish DS3 racing. This one though, because apparently it came in, like, that's the one that I think, the way it jumps to mind when any of us think of DS3 racing is that black and orange one. But they did do it in a white as well, without the stickers on it. And this is the one that I saw, and you wouldn't notice it, because like all DS3s are quite well spec'd and, quite flashy as it is. So other than, and like the ore on the badge for the DS3 Racing is tiny. It's just up in like, it's like I wasn't good at maths, but when you put the square root, or 3 squared, the little 2 you put in the corner. It's like that. Tiny little ore, red ore up in the corner of the DS3. And I was like, great little car that would be, because like they were 200 plus brake, 1.6 turbocharged, funky little hot hatch, because I think the DS3 looks good anyway. So I had a look on the Irish classifieds. Unsurprisingly, didn't find any. And then I went to the UK classifieds, and there was none for sale there either. So that's a fucking rare car. So if I ever see one coming for sale, or if any of you ever see one coming for sale, I would recommend buying it, because there ain't going to be that many of them, especially in right-hand drive. What other things did I notice in my very, very dull week? The other morning, early morning in work in the van, on a relatively packed N7 in Dublin. It's just an N7, is it considered a motorway? It being an N, national road, I assume is what it's called. But anyway, it's a 3-lane road that's 100 kilometers an hour. There was a guy baiting along, tailgate the hell out of me. I was doing 100 plus kilometers an hour in the outside lane. And I was in the outside lane because when you get to the end, it kind of splits off. You can go northbound, southbound on one of our motorways, and then you can go straight through in the outside lane to go towards our city centre. That's why I was in the outside lane, because I was going towards the city centre. He was barreling up behind me, again, the busy thing. I was like, gee, before I even knew, he's like right up on my rear bumper. Then he swings out. He's undertaking everyone, braking, tailgating people in and out, flying around like a typical dickhead Audi Q5, Q3. I think it was a Q5. They're all the fucking same. Diesel. And whatever about him, he's like a dickhead driver being a dickhead. He'd be a dickhead in whatever he was driving. But it just highlighted to me that since 2008, mid 2008 in Ireland, diesel cars have become very prevalent. Up until now, basically. Now they're seen as the devil. And the reason for this is because the Irish government changed the way you pay road tax on a car in 2008. It used to be based on engine capacity, and then they changed it to the amount of grams of CO2 per kilometre that are produced, which benefited diesel cars because they produce less grams of CO2 per kilometre than a petrol engine car. Well, they did anyway at one point. So everyone started buying diesels, and people who probably never been anywhere near a diesel car before, all of a sudden everyone had diesels. And then it's just caused a kind of a whole shift in the way people drive, because all of a sudden people have this low down and mid-range torque that they'd never had before in petrol engine cars. And I just reckon it's in the last 15 years, it's just caused a much more aggressive style of driving across the board. It's like everything in life. The internet's as fast as it's ever been, and yet, if it takes 2 seconds for a page to load on the internet, we get frustrated because we become used to things being quicker, and any delay in that just angers us. So the fact that people can go, they have this this instant acceleration almost. They expect everyone else to almost get out of the way who don't have as much torque as them. I hope I'm trying to explain this right. What I'm basically trying to say is that like people have become a lot more aggressive in their driving since the boom of the diesel car, and in turn the torque that came with that. And what I'm trying to get at here is that in this EV revolution that we're clearly on the cusp of, and again, I'm not dissing EVs. I do think they have their place, but the torque thing. So like, people have become very aggressive in their diesel cars with the torque, but now they're going to have much more torque and from an instant. And I've seen it already. Even people just knocking around in the BMW i3s and the Tesla Model 3. They drive really, really aggressively because, you know, you become used to the effect of the torque very quickly. And yeah, it's like everything, the whole world is just becoming too fast. I'll put my rose tinted glasses on and just hark back to the days when things were just a little bit slower. Because to be honest, it probably was better. Sorry, that's it. That opening rant might be some of the worst ranting I've done. I do apologise. Let's talk about some stuff that's actually happened in the motoring world. Journalists have finally got their hands on the newest, whatever the fucking model name is for the current 2 Series, the G Banger, BMW M2. And unsurprisingly, it's because it's got the same powertrain and manual. You can get a manual or a DCT, rear wheel drive, front engine. The formula is proven, and they've just they've ever so slightly tweaked it. It's slightly heavier than the outgoing car, but it's got a bit more power. It seems like it's everything is just a little bit better in the dynamic sense. Great, and I'm happy that it exists. It's a good thing. And again, some people seem to like it, and it hasn't got a giant grille like has become the trend with BMWs. But I can't get on board with the way the new BMW M2 looks. It's so fuzzy. It's just a mixed mass of shapes and surfaces, and it's ill proportioned and boxy in places and foldy in places, and I don't know, it looks terrible. But hey, look, I'm not going to bemoan about that too much because I'm happy it exists. Other cars that were released, the Gordon Murray T33 Spider. So this is the roofless version of the T33 that he released a few months ago, using the same engine that's going to be in the T50, which also the final sign-off drive video they put up of the T50 during the week as well. Gordon has given full sign-off now, so production cars are being built, and soon the customers will get them. If you haven't seen the video, go onto their YouTube or their Instagram. It's a fucking fantastic sounding car. It's again it's one of the few new cars where we can go, holy shit, that's amazing. It's compact. It's a manual gearbox. It's got luggage space. You can fit 3 people in it. It sounds great. And undoubtedly, it's going to be amazing to drive. But yeah, no, so the newest iteration from this burgeoning company, Gordon Murray Automotive, is the Spider version of the T33. The launch, he did a lot of videos and write-ups with a bunch of media outlets. He did mention the windscreen. If you look at it clearly looks too high and too long. But he has said they actually are going to trim back the windscreen, so it's actually going to look a little bit better than it did in all the stuff, all the footage and coverage of its announcement there yesterday. Personally, I wouldn't have it because I just don't see the point in getting a roofless version of a car if there is a roofed equivalent. And I think the coupe version, or whatever terminology they're using for it, is a very pretty car. I think I'd have that over the T50. Not that I'd be able to have any of them because they're going to be low volume, incredibly expensive, and they're probably already all sold. One interesting thing he did, a couple of interesting things he mentioned. I watched Harry's video. One, he mentioned when he first released the T33 that they were going to develop a semi-automatic paddle shift gearbox for the T33 to broaden the audience, although it's always going to be a very small audience. And he now announced, or when he was talking to Harry, that they've scrapped that idea because of I think it's 300 T33s they're making. They got 3 applications for the automatic gearbox. So that essentially made it null and void because the cost of making just 3 of them as he put it himself, would have made it the most expensive option probably of all time on a car. But one other thing he did mention as well is that there might be a third car, well, technically a fourth car, because there's the T50 and then there's the Niki Lauda, but that's kind of the track version of the T50. There's the T33 and a Spider variant, but there's going to be another car possibly with that Cosworth V12 that's been developed and using all these three cars. So yeah, more V12 cars from Gordon Murray, please, because they're all great. And you know, V12 combustion engine cars are certainly not long for the world, even though we have 3 coming from Gordon Murray, and Aston Martin just announced Lamborghini just announced that Revuelto, or however you pronounce it, last week. And who else? Someone else. Oh yeah, you know, Ferrari just brought out the Puro Sangue. But these are definitely the last of a dying breed. Speaking of dying breeds, Volkswagen announced that all the current models, and long short of it, the 2026 VW T-Roc is going to be the last Volkswagen with an internal combustion engine. So after 2026, no more combustion engine Volkswagens. The Mark 9 Golf, if it will be called a Golf, which it probably will, I don't think there's too much value in that name for Volkswagen to get rid of it. But the Mark 9, if there is a Mark 9, won't be a combustion engine. So the current Mark 8 Golf is the last combustion engine to Golf. Unsurprising, yes. Sad, yes. Sad times. I was going to say something about the combustion engine, or the stuff that I mentioned last week about the EU law and how they're allowing e-fuels cars. Anyway, I talked about that last week. We won't get into the whole fuel thing. I'm sure you're all well versed on it at this point. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, other news. So you're all aware, I'm sure, of the Hyundai Ioniq 5, because they're everywhere. Great looking car, I think. If I was to get an EV, I'd certainly shortlist it, although that's not going to happen. But there will be an N version, and obviously being the performance division of Hyundai. So the Hyundai Ioniq 5N is going to have a thing called the N Drift Analyzer, which is essentially what they're going to call the drift mode for the Ioniq 5N, which will allow people to drift their 2.5 ton electric car, which they say you shouldn't do on the public road. But why offer customers this thing? You just know fucking dopes are going to get in, use this, crash into a lamppost, or worse, a person on the public road, because Instagram and TikTok, etc. It's going to happen. You know, look at the fucking people falling over in fucking Citroen Amis around Monaco. You give people things and they're going to abuse it on the public roads. It's just going to happen. I can't understand how these things are allowed to happen. Because even if you don't give it to people will bend the rules anyway. Like, stuff that I noticed over the last week as well. I'm going to get back on my high horse here again. I noticed I noticed a few cars in the last couple of weeks, and I just saw a couple in the last couple of days with tinted windscreens. When did that become a thing? And how is that legal? I assume it isn't. And red seems to be the tint that they go for on the windscreens. 1, it looks terrible. 2, it can't be safe, especially at night time. And like, how? Why? Look, I've no problem with people modifying and doing unique things to their car. I certainly wasn't, unknown to doing a little bits and pieces here and there in my youth, but like, never stuff that like either looked well. I know this is subjective, but so like tinted windscreens, terrible, clearly not safe, looks shit. But then even stuff that's not unsafe, but just looks dumb, and why people bothered moving your reg plate to the side or down, or just moving it from where it's supposed to be. Like, I know cars in the past, like the Evo 6 and the Alpha 156, etc., they had their license plates cocked to one side, both for design purposes. In the world of the Evo 6, they did it because they needed more more space for the intercooler. And when it comes to the Alfa Romeo, them being Italian, it was purely for design purposes, because the shield grille protruded down so far you had to stick it to the side. But then people just doing it on their fucking Audi A3s, it just looks shit. And then like, I don't know, people putting them lower down your fucking on your Passat, just surely it's fucking up the cooling. I don't know. Sorry, I'm again. Anyone listens to this terrible podcast, I do apologise. It's beyond terrible, but I'm going to keep doing it. Other motoring news. I see in Scotland they're about to start an autonomous bus route, or a couple of routes anyway. They're going to serve around 10,000 people. I think, did they say a month? Anyway, it's going to be in Edinburgh and Fife. They're going to be running an autonomous bus fleet, which one is terrifying, Rise of the Machines. But the thing is, I've read up on it. So these autonomous buses, they're going to be driving themselves around these routes around Scotland. But there's going to be 2 members of staff on board. There's going to be a safety driver who's going to sit in the cab, who'll be able to take over should shit hit the fan. And there'll also be another person who they're dubbing the captain, who will be on the bus to make sure people are paying their fare getting onto the bus, to the bus that doesn't have a driver but does have a driver, because there's going to be a driver. So why have autonomous buses at all then if you're going to have 2 members of staff on it anyway? I don't know. It seems absolutely ludicrously stupid to me. And like, speaking of autonomy, another thing I read during the week, Ford have decided to stop investing in autonomous technology, and apparently there's a few other manufacturers are backing away from it too, because apparently it's they've realized that it's really not cost effective, which is how they're putting it. Or I think the more they realize that they can't get to a point where it's actually going to be safe, which I'm all for. I know humans are very fallible, and they always will be, but I don't know, putting the hands of safety and ethics into technology, it's never going to work. The machines are going to get us anyway, but yeah, no. Bring me back to the days of just no robots. I want no more. I'm a cynic when it comes to robots. I've watched Terminator too many times. They will kill us all. Another thing. I noticed Nissan put a teaser up on Twitter of an R32, which is kind of a quick shot of it, the lights coming on in the rear and the engine starting. But then at the end, or like the hashtag and all, was just, it says R32 EV. So you have to assume that means they're going to make an EV out of an R32 Skyline. Don't ask me why they put a picture or put up a video of one with an engine starting and clearly has a big fat wide boy exhaust on it. So it's a strange, ambiguous teaser on social media. But why turn an R32 into an EV? Like, why? It's like, those cars are iconic as it is, with the straight six. Was it the RB32? Is that what it's called? Or the RB26? I can't remember. Why make it? I know they're not super rare and there's plenty of them out there, but like, I just don't see. I just don't understand why. Lancia again are being reborn, and the first vehicle that they've teased is it's not going. Okay, they're not using an old Stratos, but the first vehicle they're going to bring out is an EV Stratos. Why do you have to bring old stuff from the past? I know. There's a lot of value in names. Like, the Stratos name has a lot of value to Lancia, and the Skyline name has a lot of value to Nissan. But like, Nissan could just make a new electronic Skyline. They didn't have to make an R32 into an EV. I know it's all just for headlines, but like, I don't know. You can see I'm not in a very good mood today. I'm very rambly. I do apologize. I'm just going to stop talking about electronic vehicles. Other than there's another Chinese EV manufacturer coming into the game. They're called Hi-Fi, HIPHI. I don't know what it stands for. an affordable, as I put it, EV that's been brought to the market. Interesting looking thing. Feel free to look it up yourself. But to me, it looks like that funky new Peugeot 408. But if the 408 was made out of Lego Technics. Strange looking thing. Last bit of motoring news I noticed as well today. RM Sotheby's have Michael Schumacher's Ferrari F2000, which is the 2000 chassis, includes in the name, Formula 1 car up for auction. Which will be interesting to see what it sells for, because that's probably the one for me that if I had the means I'd have to have, because it was the first one. It was the first championship winning car. Well, they won the constructor championship the previous year, but Schumacher broke his legs, and I'm sure if you're not aware of the 99 season, I'll fill you in some other time. But yeah, it was the car that finally broke the duct for Ferrari and Schumacher, and then started their run of dominance. But that car to me is just, it has so much. I have so much emotion tied up in it for many reasons. But yeah, so if I had the money, my God, would I love to have that, because it's a full. It's not just a show car. It's the actual chassis he raced in, engine, gearbox, the whole shebang. It's a running car. Yeah, I think they reckon about $10 million probably, if not more. I should probably check it. I'll check it later on. I'm not going to bore you with me looking up shit on the internet now again. But yeah, feel free to look that up. RM Sotheby's, type Google RM Sotheby's Schumacher F2000, it'll come up. Motorsport news. Now, the MotoGP was on at the weekend, which I only found out an hour before the race started myself, because I got a thing on social media about how Alex Marquez was on pole. Yeah, I didn't realise, because the opening round in Portugal had only been the week previous. So yeah, it was in Argentina. So luckily I just caught in time to actually watch the race. Exciting enough race. It was interesting to say the least. It was a rain-soaked race in Argentina, because I assume they would be in. Would this be their autumn down that neck of the woods? One thing is, so as I mentioned previously, Marc Marquez wasn't in attendance because he's recovering from an injury, and then the Mir, is he Johan Mir? The other Honda factory driver, he also pulled out, which I can't remember exactly why. Possibly because of an injury as well. So there was no factory Hondas there anyway. And then Miguel Oliveira, who was involved in the incident, when I say involved, who was taken out by Marc Marquez in the opening round, he wasn't there. So anyway, Alex Marquez was on pole. He slipped back to third at the start. And I can't remember. Anyway, all in. I'm the worst person in the world reporting on this stuff. The guy whose name, who I hadn't heard of and couldn't pronounce correctly last time, it's actually Marco Bezzecchi, as you pronounce it. He won the race, quite convincingly. He took the lead at the start, and he held the lead, and he stretched out a pretty decent lead in the rain-soaked conditions. So he won, and that means it was his first win in MotoGP. It's also the first win for Mooney VR6 Racing, Valentino Rossi's team. So they've got their first win. Probably the biggest shock of the race was reigning world champion and winner of the first round, Francesco Bagnaia. I can't remember exactly where he started. Was he on the front row? I can't remember. Anyway, he was running fourth, and he was catching Alex Marquez for third. Now, even if he finished fourth, he still would have been leading the championship, the way the points work out, because there was a sprint race as well, again, which I didn't realise. I don't know if MotoGP are doing sprint races at all the rounds. But anyway, yeah, he was catching Alex Marquez for third to get onto the podium, because at this early part of the season, you need to get the points in, as many as possible, because God knows how things will play out. But with 8 laps to go, he binned it. Dropped the bike, so he managed to get it going again. He did bring it home, but he brought it home in last, because he ripped one of the foot pegs off when he dropped the bike. So what that means is Marco Bezzecchi is now actually leading the championship. So yeah, it's shaping up to be, unsurprisingly, a very interesting MotoGP season, because MotoGP is, when it comes to racing, it's some of the best out there. So yeah, the podium places was Marco Bezzecchi, Johan Zarco, who was on one of the privateer, or no, would be a factory Ducati. I can't quite remember. And then Alex Marquez, who was also on a privateer Ducati. So it was a Ducati, full Ducati podium actually. Helped by the fact that there was no Hondas in the race at all. And the Aprias, who apparently were doing well in the sprint race, there was no Aprias at all in any of the mentionable positions, if my memory serves me correct. As you can tell, my knowledge of MotoGP is not as strong as my knowledge of Formula 1. But yeah, it's great stuff. If you don't watch MotoGP, I highly recommend. It's shaping up to be a good year of good racing. The next MotoGP race is not this weekend, but the weekend after. I think it's in Spain, if my memory serves me correct. Where's the calendar? Oh god, no. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, look it up yourself. It's in a couple of weeks' time. Formula 1 isn't in a couple of weeks' time, unfortunately. We just had the Melbourne Grand Prix, which I'll discuss now. But there's another race until Baku at the end of the month, because we're supposed to have the Chinese Grand Prix in the middle of April, but that's been cancelled again because China is still fully COVID restricted. So there will be no Chinese Grand Prix. But yeah, we had the Australian Grand Prix weekend just gone as well. I wasn't sure if I was going to wake up for it, because I thought it would probably be a foregone conclusion. Plus I was out on the beer the night before. But I woke up at 5:30 to take a piss, and I was like, right, well, I'm up, I may as well stay up and watch it. And I'm glad I did, because I'd set my alarm to watch the replay that was scheduled for 9:30 in the morning on Sky. But because the race, as I'll get into now, ran on so long, they were still doing their post-race debrief analysis, whatever you want to call it, on Sky, which is fucking annoying, because like if I turned on the TV at fucking 9:30 and they were talking about the results of the race, having done my best to avoid looking up anything, I'm pissed off. It's happened to a few of my mates before who didn't watch live races. They turn on fucking Sky and they've just had the results spoiled for them, expecting just to watch a replay of the race. But yeah, look, it was a exciting, certainly, well, I don't know if exciting, but it was exciting. It was an interesting race, if not necessarily all for the right reasons. But so Max was on pole again, unsurprisingly. Then we had the two Mercedes. Then Alonso, I think it was Alonso, and then Stroll, and then Ferrari were having their shit time and blah blah. Anyway, as the race started, Max had a bit of a shit start, and he got pounced by George Russell and by Lewis. Fucking Leclerc went out on the fucking opening lap. He got tagged by Stroll. Now, it was a complete racing incident. He kind of, Stroll tagged him, but Stroll had nowhere to go, and Leclerc definitely probably could have taken more avoiding action. So Leclerc has now retired out of 2 of the first 3 races, and is currently on 6 points in the championship. I think he's 7th or 8th in the standings. So anyway, yeah, George Russell took the lead, and was maintaining a pretty decent lead ahead of his teammate, and Max was back there in 3rd. And then there was Alonso. And then, if I can't remember exactly what lap it was, early enough on anyway into the race, only like lap 6 or 7. Alex Albon, who was having a bit of a stormer himself. I think he was up in 6th or 7th, because he qualified in the top 10. I can't remember exactly what place. I think possibly 8th or 9th, which is a great effort by Alex in the Williams. But I can't remember. I'm not sure I don't know if Melbourne has names for the corners. I can't remember what number, but there's the fast right left kind of S bend. It's like 5 or 6 corners in to the Melbourne track. Anyway, going into that section, he lost the rear end, of the Williams and tried to catch it, snap, and hit the barrier, ripped the front and the rear off the car, and scattered fucking gravel all over the track. So initially the safety car was brought out, so some people jumped in to try and get themselves their free pit stop under the safety car, one of them being George Russell from the lead, which meant he came back out in 7th, but it looked like he was going to get a free stop. But then the race was red flagged, which means anyone who didn't make a stop was able to pull into the pits, and the teams were allowed to work on the car while the cars are in the pit lane under the red flag conditions. So that played into Lewis, Max, Alonso, anyone who didn't pit played into their hands. So yeah, the race was eventually resumed once they had the track cleared up, which whether a red flag was needed in that scenario is questionable. But anyway, eventually Max got by Lewis, because I think with the Red Bull having DRS, and then Lewis not having DRS because he was in the lead, but with DRS open on the Red Bull and not open on the Mercedes, the Red Bull was 36 kilometers faster down the straight, which is incredibly significant. Not even taking into the fact that the car is just quicker anyway. So he breezed past Lewis, and so then it was Max, Lewis, Alonso was in 3rd. Then the mid part of the race, it kind of went into tyre management, dull phase of the middle of the race. Alonso was trying to catch Lewis, but it didn't seem like it was going to happen. So the race went on, blah blah blah. Not a whole lot happened. Then 6 or 7 laps before the end of the race, Kevin Magnussen had a very strange one. He just went a little bit wide into coming out of the, I suppose it was technically it's turn 2 again, the kind of the S of the first corner, going into the second corner at the start of the lap in Melbourne. He just went a little bit wide and he clipped the wall with his rear right tyre, and it ripped the tyre off and broke the suspension. Sent the tyre flying out into the track, and bits of debris. People in the crowd actually got hit by debris, which I'll get onto again in a moment. But again, so he pulled the car over in an okay spot. Again, a safety car was advised, but they red flagged again. So again, everyone into the pits, and there's going to be maybe 4 laps possibly, because they're going to go around the safety car. There might have been 4 laps, 3 or 4 laps of racing, to finish out the race. So then so the time passed to clear up the track. They went out, point safety car, and the safety car was, all the drivers were complaining the safety car wasn't going quick enough. So they all lost tyre temperature going around to the grid for this next restart, and then the restart happens and there was fucking chaos again. Carlos Sainz tagged Alonso, which took Alonso out, who in turn I think took out Stroll. The 2 Alpines crashed into each other and fully rode off their cars. They were out. So I think it was a Sargent in the Williams took out Nick de Vries. He ended up in the gravel. They were all out. So at this point, again, it was red flagged again. And usually at that point in a race, once it's red flagged, that will be it. We'll do a count back to the previous lap. But then there wasn't a previous lap because it was a standing start and they hadn't gone through a full sector to get a read of where everyone was. So they brought everyone into the pits, decided they were going to restart the race. But they were going to restart the race from, put everyone back into the order they were at the previous restart, minus the people who crashed out. So Alonso and Stroll got saved because although they'd been tagged, they'd kept the cars going, so they were able to restart the race. The Alpines obviously couldn't, but then people like Hulkenberg, I think, had managed to get himself up to 4th in all that melee, but because they'd rejigged the order again, he was thrown back down, I think, to 7th or whatever. But anyway, because they'd done a lap before it was red flagged, then they were going to do another lap under the safety car to bring it back around to the grid. There wasn't even going to be a lap. They were going to be released by the safety car just across the line, and you can't overtake until you go over the finish line. So yeah, it was strange. And then Carlos Sainz ended up getting a 5-second penalty for causing the collision with Alonso, which was a bit harsh because they were kind of saying they weren't going to give those kind of penalties for opening lap kind of tags, because it's, these things can happen, and especially like it really wasn't really his fault. It was kind of the issue with the Pirelli tires not being able to get, about losing temperature under the safety car, and it was all a bit of a mess anyway. But in the end of the day, Lewis Hamilton got himself on the podium, which, whatever you feel about Lewis, it was a pretty good result for him and the Mercedes team. So it was Max, Lewis, Alonso. I think Stroll was fourth. I think it was fifth. Sainz should have been fifth, but then obviously he dropped back. I'm going to bring up the top 10 here. It was all a bit messy and confusing. But look, it was still an entertaining watch. It was dramatic and exciting. It was certainly more exciting than the first two rounds. Controversial. Oh yeah, so like the things so there was a track invasion at the end of the race while cars were still going around, and also then people got hit by debris after the Magnussen incident, which is not going to look good on the organisers of the Australian Grand Prix. So we shall see if any more comes of that in this litigious and restrictive world. Because back in the day, it would have been just like, back in the day, there used to be track invasions all the time. Look up the 1992 British Grand Prix and people jumping on after Mansell won in Silverstone, and Jesus, like people got hit by debris all the time back in the day. Nothing was a good thing, but look, anyway, enough of that because I don't know what's going to come of it. But anyway, back to the results. So Verstappen, Hamilton, Alonso, Stroll. Perez was fifth, which, fairness, not bad because Perez started from the pit lane. I think he got fastest lap as well. Perez, Norris, he'll be pretty happy with that. Sixth, after what's been a pretty tumultuous start to the year for McLaren, so he picks up 8 points. Nico got seventh in the end. He actually broke down on the slowing down lap. Oscar Piastri scored his first points in his home Grand Prix. It's very much his home Grand Prix. He lives here. He was born and raised very close to Melbourne, the Melbourne track. He's from Melbourne. Zhou Guanyu scored 2 points for Alfa Romeo, and Yuki Tsunoda finally scored a point. Fair play to him. He's been crying out for those points. He finished 11th in the first two races. He was very close to scoring a point there in Jeddah, but actually he was one of those people who lost out with that third red flag. Would that be? Because in the second restart he had an absolute stormer of a restart. He breezed past, I can't remember. Anyway, he breezed past 2 or 3 cars at the start. I think he was up to fifth before they brought out the red flag again. But anyway, he still scored a point, so fair play to him. Carlos Sainz ended up being 12th with the penalty. Bottas was just ahead of him in 11th. Gasly still got classified in 13th and Ocon 14th, even though they were both running, I think, 5th and 6th, or possibly 4th and 5th. Gasly tagged Ocon, but again, racing incident. Just very unfortunate for them. Sargent still got classified in 16th. Magnussen classified in 17th, even though he crashed out in lap 52, causing that stoppage. And then, George Russell, after being fucked over by the first red flag, his fucking engine went kaput in the middle of the race anyway, so shit day for him. Albon then obviously crashed out on lap 6, and Leclerc on the opening lap. So there you go. Formula 1 next race isn't until the final weekend in April, which is in Baku, the crazy street track that is Baku. Tends to bring pretty entertaining races. So we shall see how it goes there. Max doesn't have the greatest track record there, other than the fact he did win last year. How long have I been? Have I been rambling for? I've been rambling for 45 minutes. This is very terrible and very, very long. So apologies if anyone is listening. If you are, I love you. So I'll wrap this up now with my usual shite. My classified find of the week. Not exactly necessarily a cheap car, but just it caught my eye. It's a 1953 Austin Champ, which is essentially, obviously they did, but it's a Willys Jeep essentially made by Austin. It says it's fully waterproof. So apparently it'll weigh up to, well, basically up as far as your mouth will go. So it's a post-war car, 1953. It has a Rolls-Royce engine apparently. The Rolls-Royce 2.8 litre Rolls-Royce engine, 4-cylinder, 80 horsepower. Look it up, because I like it's full military spec, green, shovels on the side, canvas roof. Like, it looks like a Willys Jeep, but a little bit more portly and kind of rugged, robust. It's completely green. Everything's green. The steering wheel is green. The seats are green. The dash is green. The outside is green. The engine is green. Everything's green. It's an interesting thing. Look it up. The Austin Champ 1953. Again, there's only one on Dundee. You'll find it. One thing they do mention in the ad is the predecessor to the Austin Champ was the Wolseley Mudlark, which is a great name. And then the successor was the Austin Gypsy. Not as great a name. It's expensive. It is. It's 22,500 euro, which is quite a lot for something which you're maybe going to drive twice a year. I don't know what you'd use that for. I'm sure it's absolutely horrible to drive. But yeah, have a look. It's a fun thing. The Austin Champ. I'm not gonna recommend a YouTube channel again this week. I'm gonna mention a film. Well, it's a documentary. I mentioned that movie, The Awakenings, earlier, many hours ago in this podcast. Which this documentary, I now realize, took its name from a line from this movie, because it's on a similar theme about people suffering from dementia. It's called Alive Inside, and I believe it's up on Apple TV, but if you don't have Apple TV, I'm sure you'll find it other ways. I watched it a few years ago, and it's just that watching Awakenings last night reminded me of it. It's quite emotional. I'm almost choking up just thinking about it here, but it's again, people who have who don't recognize their own children or are completely unresponsive, but they hear music from their youth, or just music that they loved before. Unfortunately, the terrible disease was afflicted them, and it just memories come flooding back to them. Their speech returns. They recognize people, and it's all just through music. It's an incredibly powerful documentary. I understand now, obviously, if anyone who has loved ones who are suffering from dementia, it might be a difficult watch, but also maybe it might give you a little bit of hope. But it's just an incredibly moving and incredibly emotional documentary. I recommend giving it a watch if you just, I don't know, it's a hard thing obviously to recommend. It's a tough subject, but I found it very moving. I love music, but I love people and the hope, because it's a terrible affliction, and anything that can help even the people it's affecting, but also the loved ones around them who are suffering as well. Sorry, I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible, talking about a very sensitive topic. On a slightly lighter note, I've recommended M539. I think he was the first YouTube channel I recommended. The great Sretan, who saves and restores old BMWs. Now, I'm not one for cleaning cars. I just don't have the patience, or nor do I care. Also, I kind of like a dirty car. It shows it's being used as intended. But one of the projects he's had, one of his most popular projects, is an Alpina B7, which is essentially finished. He got it completely complete full body respray on it, which looks great. In this kind of, I can't remember the name of it. It's some sort of black on the BMW scale, but it's a rich, deep blue, essentially metallic blue. So anyway, he teamed up with the lads from Gion, and they do a 5-day detail on this thing, and it gets PPF'd and everything. And if you're into car cleaning and car detailing, it's absolutely outrageous. I've never seen a more pristine, and like it's better than any car that comes off a production line. It's ridiculous. So check it out. M539. It's his most recent video. If you're into car cleaning or just detailing, check it out. It's unbelievable. And yeah, I'll finally wrap this up now with my song recommendation. It's a few months old, this one. Again, I'll say a few months. It's only 2 or 3 months old. But Killer Mike, who is a solid rapper in his own right and has been for many years, but he'll be most famously known for being one half of the great RTJ, Run the Jewels. Killer Mike, he has a song called Run, which it says it features Dave Chappelle. I know Dave Chappelle does do a bit of narration in the video, but I don't think it actually appears in the song itself. But it's just a good Atlanta, Georgia, grimy rap song. So check it out. Killer Mike Run. You'll get it in all your favourite music outlets. I'll shut the fuck up now because I've rambled a lot, terribly. But anyway, if you have been listening, again, as always, I love you. Be safe, be well. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.